Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. We're just kind of, I think people are still rolling in. We're anticipating a pretty small group today. I think there's a lot of craziness going on with APR things and people and start of semester stuff. So we may have just a small group today, but appreciate you guys all showing up. I don't know if any of you attended our last session, but if you were not there, we did. The way we're kind of going about this is we designed a simple 2-page newsletter template. And the first session was kind of going step by step on how to create a document, how to add elements, just kind of your basic InDesign elements that you'd be using just for everyday designs. And we went through the first page of the newsletter template. Today, we're going to be going through the second page, and some of it's going to be a little bit repetitive. So if you were in session 1, just kind of bear with us. And we're going to kind of reiterate some stuff and then jump into a few new things as well. And I'll just start out. I know I recognize a few of you, so it's good to see you. But I'll start out, I'll introduce myself. My name's Hillary O'Brien. I am the web specialist at Boise State University, and I work for our SSS programs and McNair. And I've been at Boise State for about 5.5 years now. And I use InDesign quite a bit in my day-to-day work. I do a lot of our marketing design and our social media. And if any of you have been to the NAEOP conference, I use InDesign to create that conference program. So it's really like very versatile. There's a lot of different things you can do for it. It's really great for print media. And I am joined today by Naomi. And Naomi, I will let you introduce yourself.
Hello, I recognize you too. It's nice to see you. I am Naomi McCreary. I'm the program director at the Southern Oregon University McNair program. I've been here at SOU for 8 years. I've been the program director just since October. And I am also the Oregon Trio Association Communications representative. There we go. And I also have, we use InDesign here in our program for all of our print materials. I also have a background in marketing and using InDesign in that arena as well for things like product packaging and all kinds of stuff. So it's a really, once you get the hang of it, it's a really wonderful tool to be able to use. So nice to see you all.
Okay, I'm going to start out first here, and then Naomi's going to kind of finish up at the end. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's make sure, and it says it's sharing, but can everyone see it okay? Just want to make sure.
Also, real quick, well, one of us, since we're kind of doing this together, if you have any questions, go on and pop them in the chat box, and whoever's not presenting will address them for you.
Yes, we're a small group. So yeah, if you need me to slow down or if you have any questions, please just, feel free to put questions or suggestions or anything in the chat. So it's all pretty casual today. Okay, so first off, I'm going to go over, just show the design again that we're working on. This is our first page, which we covered in our first session. And I kind of went over how to add headers and images and body text, and then color as well. And then this is the second page of our design. So I am going to kind of reiterate how to add these headings, how to add our body text and images. So it might be slightly repetitive, but those are just like kind of some of the main elements of using InDesign. So I think it's good to kind of reiterate that. I'll also show you how to do this kind of fun 2-column layout, but they're sort of offset. You can see kind of one is narrow, one is wider. On our first page, we just had equal columns. And so I'm going to show you how to just kind of manipulate this column width. And we're also going to go over how to wrap text like this around images, which is a really cool feature and I use a lot. So to get started, I have my, this was the design I was working on during our first session, and you can see the first page is done. So we're going to jump into the second page. And I just want to reiterate, when you're working on an InDesign document, it's really good practice and really important to kind of keep all of your document elements together in one folder. So whenever I'm working on a project like a newsletter like this, I store all of my images, and everything that all of the links that I'm working with in one folder. And then I save that InDesign document to that folder as well, just usually on my desktop. That just makes it so that you don't lose any images and doesn't create any problems down the line. And Naomi is going to talk more about what happens if you lose an image. So she's going to cover that later. So I am going to just jump right in here. And so right now I am in, if you go over here, you can see that we are in preview mode, which is really nice. It shows you what your document will look like when it's printed, which is awesome. But for editing, I'm going to go over to this normal mode here. And this will bring up, as you see, we have our column guides, we have our bleed line, which if you want, so this big image here, if you want your image to extend all the way to the edge of the page when you get it printed, you need to extend it actually past the edge of this document out to this red bleed line. That will ensure that when it's printed and it's cut down by a professional printer, the image will still reach all the way to the edge of the page. So, all right, let's jump into our second page here. You can see I actually already have this column guide set, but let me show you how to actually do that. To set columns, you want to go up to Layout, Margins and Columns, and here you can adjust the number of columns you have on your page. So let's do, oops, now I'm at -1. So right now we have, it just defaults normally to 1, which is just one page. We're going to go ahead and add 2, and by default it sets the column guides to right in the middle of your page, so you have 2 equally equal width columns, and then if you did more columns, say 3, it just defaults to like an equal width for all columns. But we're going to do 2, and you see this gutter option here that indicates how much space you have in between your columns. So if you wanted wider columns with less space in between, you can adjust it. Or if you want much more space between your columns, you can adjust it accordingly. I am going to leave it at about 1/2 inch because we're going to end up putting a vertical line in between our columns as like a nice kind of visual divider. So once I have that, I'm going to say okay. And to a really fun trick that I like using to adjust the column width just manually, you can go up to View, Grids and Guides, and then you'll see this Lock Column Guides option. You want to make sure that that is unchecked. So right now we're good to go, but if you did see that it was checked, you would just click it and it would uncheck it, and that actually unlocks these guidelines. So now if I just take my selector arrow and just click and hover, you'll see this kind of 2-sided arrow. And now you can actually just kind of click and drag to where you want that column divider, which is really cool. You can just customize it to whatever you want. So for this design, I'm going to drag it to just about the 2.5, 2 3/4 inch mark. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it for now. And there we go. Now we have 1 narrow column and 1 wide column. So now let's add our vertical line down the center. For that, we will just go over to our line tool. And for lines, you can click and drag and just kind of make them go any direction. If you want it to be straight down or straight, you can do this for horizontal as well. But if you want it to be perfectly straight, you can hold the Shift key and just click and drag that line. And there we go. And see, this is an interesting thing. So now I click away and you actually can't see it, but if you hover above it, you'll see that mark where that line is. So this is kind of an interesting thing. So that indicates that we drew a line, but that it doesn't have any color yet. And so if I click on this line, we're going to go to our stroke panel over here. And just a quick side note, I'm going to be using a lot of these kind of panels and menus over here. If you're ever in InDesign and you don't see these options, you can go up to your Windows option, and all of those menus can be accessed through here as well. So just, if somehow a menu isn't appearing, that's where you can find it. So we're going to go over to our stroke menu, and we're going to set, you can see that our stroke weight is at 0 right now. So we're going to set it to 1. And now you can see that we have a default black line. Looking good so far, but we're actually going to change it to match the kind of nice green color that we have running through our design. And I'm going to do that through my libraries tab over here. I created a library specifically for this design called Fall Colors. And so For that, I'm going to select this nice green. And then I'm just going to navigate over here really quick because I want to show everybody this option. You can see that now that we have the green line, you can see that green color up here in this color selector box. And then we also have this box that has a line through it. So this is the fill color and the stroke color. And so let me just give you a demonstration really quick. If I drew just a nice circle shape and I can give it this green stroke color, that will just do the outline of the shape. If I wanted to switch that and have just the shape filled in with that green color, I can use this kind of two-sided arrow here. If I just click that, now I have a filled in circle with no outline. If I wanted a different colored outline, I could just double click on this stroke field. And now I have this nice color selector that I can kind of just drag around and select. And now if I zoom in here, you can see that we have our green circle with this nice kind of weird purple outline. So that's just kind of something I wanted to point out. That's what those two kind of color boxes indicate. So let me get rid of the circle since we don't need it for our design. Let me zoom out, and I'm actually going to kind of click and drag, and I'm going to bring this line all the way down to our margin line at the bottom here. Oops, and there we go. Perfect. Okay, and now I am going to add, I'm just going to navigate back to our template here. I'm going to go ahead and work on this heading 3. So I'm going to add our heading, and I'm going to add our body text. So again, and I apologize if you're in session 1, this is going to be a little bit repetitive, but adding text is kind of the #1 thing you do in InDesign. So it's a fairly important element. So I'm going to just go over it again. So to set our heading, I'm going to use this type tool, and I'm just going to kind of click and drag a text box at the top. And I will just type in heading 3. And you can see it appears small and it defaults to this kind of Minion Pro 12-point font, but we are going to change it to match the font on our first page, which for our heading is Playfair Display, which is a really, no, it's not going to do it, sorry. Okay, oh, and then we're going to switch it to, here we go, 25-point font. That's what I was missing. And we're going to go bold. And we want this to match our nice green color. So again, I'm going to go over to our libraries option and click this nice green. And there we have our heading. And then I'm just kind of going to repeat that similar process and add our body text. So again, we'll use the type tool. We'll just click and drag a text box. And in the first session, I did say that when you're adding paragraph text, if it's anything more than just like a sentence or two, it's really good practice to type out your body text in a Word document. Word is just more robust for spell check, for formatting. So it's really good practice to type out what you want to include in your document in a Word document, and then just copy and paste that over. So I'm actually going to set the font before we copy and paste our text. I'm actually going to set the font settings ahead of time. So then when I copy and paste, it'll be totally formatted and will match everything. So I'm going to go up here, and for our body text, we're using this nice font Lato that I really like. It's a sans serif font. I use it for a lot of designs. I'm going to do 11-point, and we're going to have it be kind of a light. So there we go. And then I have my Word document here, and you can see it's just placeholder text. So it looks a little crazy, but this is just for the example. So I'm just going to copy and paste this over into our text box. And let me just zoom in here a little bit. So the first thing you can see is that some of these words are hyphenated across multiple lines. And it kind of defaults to doing that. And I haven't found an option to like turn that default off. It kind of annoys me a little bit because I don't normally like having hyphenation across lines. But there's a really easy way to fix that. So we'll click on our text box, and then we'll go over here to this paragraph menu. And you just see this little box here, and you uncheck, and then now that's all that you need to do. Now you can see that there's nothing split across multiple lines. And then another thing that I wanted to bring your attention to is this red kind of plus sign down here. That's really important to pay attention to because that indicates that you have text that's being cut off. So that means that our text box is not big enough for all of that text that we just copied and pasted. And so that's really important if you're wanting a document to go to print. If I just sent this to print now, all of this text that you can't see will be cut off and will not show up in the printed document. So that's really important to watch out for. And there's a couple ways to fix this. So if you can double click on this plus sign, and that actually just gives you a brand new text box with all of the text that has been cut off. I also like to, if you right click on the text box and then go to fitting, fit frame to content, that will just automatically adjust the size of your text box to fit your text. So I usually go with that option because I most of the time like to keep all of my text, especially if it's kind of one document like this. I like to keep it all in one text box just for formatting purposes. So I usually use that kind of fitting fit frame to content option. So there we go. Let me zoom out. And we have our heading 3. We're looking good. So now we're going to add our, go back here, we're going to add our nice leaf image. And then we're going to go on to our 4th heading and our 4th section and our text wrap with that leaf image. Okay, so I'm going to take a sip of water here really quick. Apologize. This is like the most talking I've done today. So, okay, so to add our big leaf image, we're going to go over to this rectangular frame tool. And we're just going to kind of click and drag here at the top of the page. And I don't want this image to extend to the full length of the page when it's printed. So that's why I'm not extending it to that red bleed line. So I'm just kind of keeping it within our margins for this. And then once I have that text or that frame drawn, I will go up here to File. I will go to Place. And then this is my, I was going to show the whole process of how to get there, but it just automatically went to the file that I needed. I have a file on my desktop called Newsletter Templates. And then within that, I have all of my links for this document. So then we're going to select our fall leaves image and we will click open. And so you can see that it's really zoomed in. There's an easy way to fix that. If you right click on the image, you can go to fitting and you go to fill frame proportionally. And now you can see that that has zoomed out and it's much more manageable and looks like what we wanted. And then if I hover over this image, you can see this circle appear. If you click on that, you can actually, you'll see this kind of orange bounding box appear around the image. That's the full size of the image. And we can actually kind of click and drag to reposition this image. So if I wanted kind of to move this up a little bit, I can do that. I'm just going to kind of center it how I think looks nice. That's kind of a cool feature that you can kind of move it around a little bit. And then if you use these boxes, these small white boxes on the side, you can actually click and drag to resize your bounding box and actually expose more of that image. But I'm going to kind of keep it a little bit more narrow. All right. We are looking good. So let's go ahead and add our 4th heading. And again, we will just use our type tool. We will click and drag, and we will set our font settings up to Play Fair Display, bold, and we will do 25-point font, just so it's nice and large. We'll say heading 4. We will highlight, and we will go back to our nice color library, and we'll select our nice green. All right, perfect. And then I'm just going to kind of manually just manipulate this bounding box just so it kind of fits more around our heading. All right, so for our last paragraph text, again, we will use our type tool to draw our text box. Do a nice big text box here. And then I will copy and paste from my Word document again. And actually, before I copy and paste, I will set my font settings. I really like setting the font settings before I copy and paste. That way I don't have to highlight all of the text and then do the settings. It just kind of makes it one less step in my mind. But all right, there we go. Perfect. And then you can also see that it defaulted to that hyphenated option again. So we will just make sure we select our text box, go to our paragraph menu, and unhyphenate that. Perfect. So, okay, we have that. And then our last kind of element that we're going to add, and I will just show you again, we're going to add this leaf image, and then I'm going to show you how to wrap the text around the image. And there's a few different options with that. So we'll kind of go over how to do that. And this is something I use a lot. I use this when I make the NAEOP conference program. I do this basically like with all of my designs because it looks really nice. So we will go to our, again, rectangular frame tool, and I'm just kind of gonna draw it sort of like in the middle to the right here, sort of where we're gonna want our image. And it looks a little chaotic because of the text behind it, but we'll go through the process. So then to add our image, we will go up to File again, go to Place, and this time we will select this nice leaf image. Let's say Open. And again, we're super zoomed in, so we will right click, fitting, and then fill frame proportionally. And perfect. Now we have our leaf image, and you can still see that it's kind of overlaying on that text. And so let me show you our text wrap options. If we just kind of, we're going to want to select both our text box and our image. So if you hold Shift, click your text box, and then also select your image, that will make sure both elements are selected. And you can see if there are these small white boxes around the edge of your elements, that indicates that you have selected those. So now that we have those selected, we can go to our text wrap menu down here. And you can see here that we have no text wrap selected. We're going to want to select this next one, which is called Wrap Around the Bounding Box. And there we go. That's basically it, but there's super simple. But there's a couple of different options within this kind of menu that you can play with. So you can see how the text is kind of close to this image. And personally, I don't think that looks very aesthetically pleasing. So I'd like a little bit more space between the image and the text. And that's super simple to do. You can use these measurements here to actually add padding around the image. And let me demonstrate what that does. And see, now you can see that there's this kind of exterior bounding box that has appeared around the image. And what that does is that just pushes the text away. So the text can't get any closer to the image than that bounding box. So if you really wanted the text to be far away, you can create a large bounding box. If you want it to be a little smaller, you can just set it to what your preference is. And then we have this wrap to option. So right now we have wrap to both right and left side selected. So let me show you what that means. If I move this image into the middle of the document, the text will wrap on both sides. If I just click this down arrow, you can actually wrap it to just the right, just the left. And then there's some more options for the side towards the spine if you're doing more of like a bound book type layout, since you can wrap it to the largest area. So that a couple different options there, which is really nice. But I am going to just wrap it to the left side, and we want our image to be kind of placed over here. And there we go. And then also, again, just to bring your attention to, I just noticed that my text box is not big enough to fit the text. I always try to keep an eye on that. So again, for that, we'll select our text box. We will go to Fitting, Fit Frame to Content. And there we go. And so now that we have all of our elements, just kind of zoom out and take a look, see how we're liking it. So now, once I kind of have all my design elements in there, this is when I'll go over to our preview option, and now we can see how it looks. And right off the bat, I see the spacing between our heading 3 and our paragraph looks a little bit too wide, looks a little bit wonky. So that's what the preview mode is really nice for. Sometimes when you have all those grid lines and those guides, it's really nice for when you are wanting to line things up perfectly, but then sometimes it can cause a lot of visual chaos. So it's hard to sometimes see when things aren't perfectly aligned how you would want. So I'm gonna make this text box a little bit smaller, and then I'm just gonna click and drag this text box up to kind of mirror the spacing that we have over here. And zoom out, and that looks a little bit better. So yeah, so that preview option is really nice for just kind of getting those guidelines out of the way and just kind of seeing how your design will look. So yeah, so that is kind of the elements I wanted to cover for today. And let me just check my notes to make sure I didn't miss anything here. And does anyone have any questions so far? If not, we can go over to Naomi if you're ready to kind of go over. She's going to delve more into a little bit more of the fonts and formatting of fonts, and she has some fun stuff. So if you're ready, I can stop sharing and kind of hand that over to you.
Okay, give me just one moment, pull this up. I'm just going to give a quick reminder that in our session 1, we did talk about, or Hillary talked about, creating the document and all the setup, and as well as, and we'll go over this section, this part a little bit more, the saving it as a PDF to submit to a printer. And all of these are recorded and kept on the NAEOP website. So I know it's a lot of, we both know it's a lot of information at first. And so we're hoping that you can kind of work along with it. All right, so is everyone seeing this error missing font screen I've got up? Okay, wonderful. So a lot of times when you're working on documents, or at least for me, a lot of times I've been working on documents, you're working with other people, or I've opened my InDesign on a different computer, and you'll end up having some issues sometimes. So I purposefully, when Hillary shared me all the documents with me, I purposefully did not download the zip file that had like the fonts and the images and everything in it, so you could see what these errors will look like, and I can kind of walk you through them. So I do not have the fonts that she's using on my computer, and so this is the first thing that pops up. And it gives you the options. Since the font she uses is an Adobe font, I could activate those fonts and it will pull them in. If it is not an Adobe font and it's a special one that you need to download and load into your program, you can do that as well. But what I'm going to do for today, just to kind of go through it easily, is you can also do replace fonts. So for replace fonts, what it's going to do is just, instead of using her font that she had, the Lado, it's going to give me the default Adobe font. If you're working with someone, you definitely want to be on the same page with them and have the same fonts, so you're working together. But I'm not going to go through the downloading process right now while you're out here. I just wanted you guys to see this error. So for today, I'm just going to do the replace fonts, and it's going to pop up. It'll tell what fonts, and I'll do done. So now it's just going to give me this that I can work in. And we pop out of preview. So now this is showing highlights of, these are the fonts, they're the default fonts rather than the ones that were formatted in the thing. And also we're going to look at these images. Since I did not download the images, it's showing these question marks because it's not seeing on my computer where these images should be. So whether you're needing, another issue you'll have sometimes is you'll see where I'll be working in an InDesign file and I'll put an image in, and then I will go into Photoshop and adjust that image or change it slightly. And then you'll get a little exclamation point because the original image doesn't match the image that's in InDesign. So let me pull this down because my Zoom is blocking it to get up to the area. So what you can do is, now I've lost all of my, so you can click on it and go try to find the image. You can also click into your links And if you've adjusted the image, if you click into your links, then you can just recycle them. So that's what those error messages will be. The other thing I wanted to touch on a little bit is kerning. So kerning is the spacing between images, or I'm sorry, the spacing between letters. Let me pull up. I'm having trouble here. So right here, we're going to see, this is where the kerning will be dealt with. There's metrics and there's optical. This is kind of a personal preference. I personally prefer using optical. The difference between metrics and optical for kerning, this is the spacing between letters. So every font, some fonts more than others, have information within the font that tells how far each letter should be away from each other. That will be the metrics that's built into the font. Some fonts have a more robust metric built into it, and some don't. And so if you switch to optical, you'll see it slightly changes. The optical is taking the shapes of the letters and creating the distances of the letters through the shape of the letter instead of what's built into the font. So I personally prefer using optical just because it's, especially if you're not using a lot of standard fonts, it's a hit or a miss on the metrics. And it seems like a small difference, but especially with the flow of the page, you'll see it more when it's printed out. There is also a way to make things fit. So sometimes you're wanting things to look a certain way, or if you've got the widows and orphans, the hyphens on the end, and you're wanting to manually fix those to have it look a certain way, you can go over to this. This here is where you can manually change the spaces between the fonts. Now the standard is, it's a 0 usually, but you can go up, and if you'll see, it's shifting my fonts or my work spacing out, and you can go down and it will squeeze them together. So the standard, like I said, is 0, and distance that you can use that won't make the eye notice an issue is typically 30. So plus 30 or minus 30. So your eye will still read it and not notice that the letters are very far apart. If you go above 30 here, it kind of starts looking weird. And then I'll go up to -30 to squish them together. And it's still, your eye just kind of reads it easily. And if you go further, you'll see the letters start really squishing in on top of each other. So if you find yourself in a place, and I actually end up using this quite often, doing the spacing myself, even after I've done the optical or use the metrics, just to make things fit or fill an area on a page that I'm wanting filled. So plus or minus 30 is kind of what you're looking for. There's one other thing that I wanted to share. Similar to other programs, you can cut and paste in here. So for example, here we have the bottom piece, and you can Control C the footer and go down here and Control V, and it will pop it down here as well. So that's something that I actually end up using quite a bit, as well as the cut and paste feature is really the same in here. So once you have everything how you're wanting it, the layout looks nice for you, and you can click over to the preview and it works well. I'm just going to go over one more time what Hillary went over last time, which is exporting this file for print. So what you're going to do is go up here to File and do Adobe PDF Presets, High Quality Print. We'll save the spot. I'm just going to save this on my desktop. All right, and now it's popping up this print information. I hope everyone's seeing that print information. But holler out if you're not seeing it. So up here under compatibility, you're going to want to go to the highest level of compatibility. This will make it so the PDF works with that highest level of Adobe and everything below it. So
Naomi, sorry to interrupt. I'm not seeing the print box. I don't know if anyone else has seen it.
Okay, let me see if it's Hold on just a sec. Let's see.
Now I'm seeing it.
Okay, wonderful. So right up here, we're pulling off to the high quality print. Right up here, you go to the compatibility of the highest level of Acrobat that you have. That'll make it so if your printer has a lower level of Acrobat, it will be able to read anything below that. But you don't want to, default for some reason seems to be Acrobat 5 or 6, but then you want it to be compatible with all of these. So go to the highest level. Always go to your marks and bleeds and click this use document bleed settings. That will include all of the extra area so they can cut the print. A slug area is something that you can put at the bottom when you're setting up your document. Slug area is typically used to give instructions to the printer. So it's not something that'll show up on the print. It'll be an additional little area that you can kind of put notes or any specific instructions for the printer. We don't have a slug on this, so I won't put that here. But if you do utilize that, that's what that's for. And then you're going to go on and export it. It's telling me I'm missing these fonts, which is fine. And that will export it. It stopped me since I'm missing the fonts, but it will let you, it'll tell you if there's any hangups when you're going through. But that's how you go on and save it. You submit that PDF to the printer. Some printers will come back and ask for you to submit all of your InDesign files and the document and also all of the pieces, all the images in a zip file. That happens, I don't know, maybe like half the time. My local on-campus print shop never requests that, but when I'm sending our McNair Scholars journal out to an offset print shop off campus, they always request the full InDesign file as well as all images. So that's another reason that it's helpful to keep them all together in one area. So I know I went over that kind of quickly. I think the biggest part is just that kerning piece is kind of gives you a little bit more control. So that is all I have. If anybody has any questions. One awesome thing about doing newsletters and creating these InDesign pieces is in our program, we put out newsletters twice a year, winter and spring. And I've only had to create the documents once because then I'm just able to go in and update them and use that template. So it's not something that you have to build from scratch each time. It's actually really helpful to be able to use that first one that you create kind of as a template. Linda.
Actually do have a question as you were talking to me in terms of like there's so much effort and energy into putting together a newsletter, right? And you said I'll only do it twice a year. How do you all know if your newsletter is being read? And also being timely too, right? I mean, if you're only putting it out once, let's say once a quarter even, what are we putting in there? And is it time sensitive?
So for our program, what I put in there, I actually just picked up our winter newsletters. We do one in winter and we do one in spring. Because of how our program runs, our cohorts start in January. So I'm about to bring in my 23 cohort. And so my winter newsletter, I have a standard template for winter, a standard for spring. My winter newsletter is about our program, welcoming the new cohort with all of their names. I include an alumni story and highlight, and I include, all of my students that had honors this last year, and just kind of like welcome to the program, welcome these new students, and these are our continuing scholars as well. And then a little bit about the program, a little bit about McNair, TRIO programs, and the benefits. The spring newsletter is much more robust. It's my winter newsletter is 4 pages, and my spring newsletter is 8 pages. The spring newsletter has, I have students that are graduating, so each of them have a picture and a little article about what their degree is in and what PhD program or graduate program they're going on to. I do a larger, almost full page highlight of one of our alums that have received a PhD. they are going into their summer internship experiences, so I include that in the spring one as well. I'll let a note from the director. I recognize all of our mentors and advisory council, and then I write what they're doing for their summer internships in there as well. And then if we've done any events, like we're taking our students to Oregon Shakespeare Festival, or I take them up to PSU to the conference, then I have a picture and a little write-up about that. So it's just kind of what we're doing in the program. And how I distribute these is I get usually 100 of them printed here on campus. Those are distributed to all of our faculty mentors, and they're also distributed to our admin here. So my vice provost, president will get them to see what we're doing. And then they're also provided at our orientation event and at our recognition event. So any of our public events, I also keep them in the office. And then we have an alumni network since we track our alumni. So that's also published on our Facebook, our closed Facebook group. And then we also have been talking in our OTA board meetings about with the district reps and stuff, possibly pulling together our newsletters that we do and sending them to our district reps, just so they are seeing like the regular stuff that we're doing. So there are kind of multiple places they go. I can tell you that my spring newsletter that has all of the extra information is something I actually use quite a bit. I keep one on my desk and I regularly end up referencing it. So it's kind of helpful. And I can tell you the support staff here on campus and faculty and admin really enjoy getting them as well. So they're not, because we tap them for help and then they get to see what is actually coming from it through the newsletters. So that's usually how we use them. Any other questions? I also, if you're going to create a digital copy, so I have the digital copy that I post, sometimes they're posted in our publication section on our website. You want to make sure that that PDF is ADA compliant with the alternate text on images, and you can check PDFs for ADA compliance. So that's just a piece. If you are going to post it digitally, make sure that you check the ADA compliance on that through the PDF. All right. Do you have anything else to add, Hillary? What do you do with your newsletters?
Well, we don't have one currently. We've done it in the past, and I was going to say we've usually done more digital because ours has been more focused on students. So we'll send out something with upcoming events, and we did have for a while, and this kind of sort of fizzled out during COVID when everyone was kind of on like online like overload on things, but we used to send out a newsletter with like a service, kind of like a MailChimp, which to Linda, this goes to your point about how do you know if people are looking at it or opening it. Services like that, and there's many different kinds. They all have their pluses and minuses, but we've used MailChimp, and you can actually go in and you can see who has opened your emails, who has clicked links. And so we've usually in those kind of like newsletter emails that we would send out, we would include, we would download our design into a PDF from InDesign and then attach that as a link along with all the other information we were sending out at that time. So then we could actually see who was clicking on it, who in our audience was kind of participating and seeing that information. So in regards to that, that's kind of a good way to, if you're sending out digital things, to kind of track and kind of get those statistics on who is viewing your things you're sending out.
Thank you. And I do like MailChimp. We use it for other things just to see if our students are opening. And it is helpful if a student says, I never received anything about, requiring me to come in for my check-in. I'm like, because you never opened your email.
It is interesting to see those stats sometimes. And it's like sometimes kind of depressing. It's like students need to be checking their email more. But yeah, that's all I have. If anyone has any other questions, you can also email us anytime. Yeah, both Naomi and I use InDesign all the time, so we're happy to answer questions or do any quick tutorials, or yeah, I'm always happy to do like a video share or Zoom if you have a specific issue you're running into and just can't seem to figure it out. So yeah, please reach out with any questions, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you for watching. Hi, Luana.